Thank you. So I'm supposed to be Somi's AI version. And that tells you how it's not trained well. So what you have, the prompt was Tom Cruise, doppelganger, haha. And they only got the haha right. So.
Thanks, that's great.
We are waiting for AI to give the makeover.
It's called God's Promise Tool.
So, no, that's okay. I have the absolute honor and privilege to be having this conversation with Dharmendra, who doesn't need a lot of introduction. I think most of you know who he is. So I'm going to dive right in. We're going to start with the question around how is AI creating in-store and online experiences or being used to create a truly omni-channel experience?
Yeah, I think Leena covered a lot of those, what's happening at the cutting edge of AI. But if you look at businesses, how we are evolving, at least in the region, what's happening is until now, businesses were in silos. So offline retail operated as a channel and online was a different channel. But now with AI, it's all becoming so integrated. So if you take different streams, if you take different functions, you're seeing a lot of activity happening in using machine learning per se, most of the times. But there is a lot of AI now coming into predictive analysis of how things are going to work. Leena gave that example of Carrefour. But if you look at, say, supply chain as a stream, then there's a lot that's happening from order management systems perspective. So today you are able to ship a product from anywhere to a consumer, right to the point that the consumer is actually physically available, right? So that accuracy of understanding on which shelf a product is kept and what is the fastest route to optimize to get to that consumer in the shortest possible time in the most cost efficient space of time is getting computed at real time. And this information is available on a website, in a store. So that's one stream. If you look at marketing per se, the gap between acquisition and retention, which used to be separate channels before, are now it's now getting reduced. So real-time data churn is happening where you're able to not just depend on a customer's information, but somebody came to my store and bought something versus now I'm able to, based on the device the customer is using, I'm able to kind of map their journey in the store. I'm able to map how those customers are interacting with my website. And I'm able to get user data hashed along with customer data, right? So the profiling is becoming so much more efficient, so much more faster. And therefore, when you look at this line between digital marketing being an acquisition channel and CRM being a retention channel, it's becoming so much shorter. And the life cycle of that data point traveling through this universe is becoming shorter. So the shorter the recycling of data. So if you look at fashion as a business, it would take 18 months to get a feedback for, say, a brand that was making clothing from consumers maybe 30 years ago. But today that is becoming a real-time information flowing back, feedback saying this size doesn't fit me, I like this fit, I don't like this fit. And these millions of tons of data coming in together, getting processed and then getting utilized. The Carrefour example is a starting point, but if you look at it from a various businesses perspective, we're all utilizing AI and mostly ML, but AI in some form or the other. So I think it's taking shape as we speak. It's like humanity evolving, so we're seeing it happen together.
And do you think there's any barriers to entry? Like I know our colleague talked about, having, staff who don't have the experience and the skill sets. But do you think there's other barriers to entry, or will this be something that'll be available to all retailers at some point?
No, I think it's already available to all. It's democratized in that sense. So everyone has, in their digital maturity, reached some stage of utilizing some form of AI ML. And it's about how much are you willing to invest in what technology. Some are needs, are basic needs that the business needs to fulfill. But there are some which are good to haves, which probably you could always skip, right? So like Erica mentioned, from a ROI perspective, what is it that fits into your business plan and what are you willing to invest in? But I'm seeing everyone in this room is utilizing AI in some way or the other, from either at a personal level or at putting some business use cases together and driving it. So it's definitely there for everyone to use.
And I guess at what point do you think AI might make the creative process obsolete? So, you know, we have like designers, like the way that fashion, you know, it's fashion designers on the catwalks, and that filters down into different levels of fashion, for example, right?
Yeah.
At what point does AI learn enough about the customer preferences and shopping and
No, if
history
it-
to
yeah.
be able to overtake?
Yeah. No, I think it's far away from being able to overtake, because the human mind has imagination which is very difficult for any other being to kind of replicate, at least in the short term. Maybe in the longer term, maybe in the 100-year time frame, it may happen that it overtakes imagination, but that's where the real crux lies, right? So from the way I see it, it's going to be a very collaborative space where human beings, a lot of our mundane stuff will of course go away. So if today designers are spending a lot of their time doing repetitive tasks, that can go to AI and ML. But from creating new avenues perspective, thinking, coming up with new ideas will still remain a very human task. So what will actually happen is it'll become a far more efficient space where the creator is actually spending more time thinking, creating, building blocks of how the system is going to work, versus or if you were to take, for example, a designer who's doing graphic design today, a lot of conversations that in 6 months' time graphic design is not going to be needed. But that's not true, because the real task of the graphic designer will get upskilled. They will utilize these and it will be a starting point. The one thing that we keep missing a point always is human beings evolve with technology, right? So 30 years ago, when some of us were probably younger, we were used to a telephone which was probably a dial, then the phone became a push button. Today, children are born with the knowledge of how to use a phone, right? A 2-year-old child knows how to use a mobile phone. And that's evolution. So that evolution is happening for human beings as well. And therefore, the new generation will be born with the intelligence of how to use AI. So it'll be a process that goes together. It's going to be very collaborative. There will be areas where we need more governance, more understanding of how to do things, but it's definitely going to be a collaborative space. It will not make roles obsolete. It will make some parts of your role obsolete, but the other parts of your creativity will get boosted further.
I mean, to that point, what is the responsibility of the corporate, right, in terms of AI and ethics and also environmental sustainability, right? Because it's a lot of compute power in the world of AI. Where do you think they should be, or are corporations starting to consider these aspects?
The closest example of it is the aviation industry, right? So until the 1900s, everyone thought if you flap your hands, you could fly. Until the Wright brothers flew fixed wing, right? And then that changed the entire way the world thought of flying. And today you look at 130 years later, it's a very different industry, right? We look at it from not just travel, but we look at it as a luxury industry, etc., etc. So the same, AI is probably still at that stage where we just realize that you need fixed wing to fly. So corporations are important because this is where a lot of the focus is going to come from. Governments outside of the UAE is the only country in the world which has an AI minister, right? So that's where maturity, even from a government perspective, is not there. And a lot of this development is happening at the private space. So therefore, responsibility lies largely on corporates, on how do they create structures that keep corporate governance and they keep the development of AI through that structure of approvals which still happen at a human level, right? So any process that gets created of learning, of implementation, it needs a quality check to happen, which has to happen at a very human level. So corporates have to design their constitutions of how they're going to use their data, how they're going to ethically make it available to the end consumer, and how are they going to keep making sure that the process is watertight, there is no area for any misuse of the products that they've created.
But I guess, you know, who's responsible when AI gets it wrong? And who do we hold accountable? Do we need to have, you know, and it's only when something really, you know, drastic goes wrong that then, you know, legislation will come out, and then there'll be governing bodies, and is it governments? And how do we, with the use of data being so international, which which, does it need to be a global standard, or, how do we regulate the use of AI really, or govern it in that way?
Yeah, no, I think it's going to take time. It's going to evolve. We have this quintessential human urge to put blames, point fingers, but it's not going to be, you'll never get an answer which says XYZ is responsible for failures. It's going to be collective responsibility of both building success and taking the blame of the failure. Today, AI is at a stage where, look at it, if you were to groom your child, you have to teach him or her how to what etiquette is, how do they behave in society. The same thing has to be taught to AI. It's like a child that's coming up with us, and whatever we as humans choose for AI to kind of deliver to us is how it's going to evolve, right? So a lot of the responsibility will be collective. There is always this need of people understanding what they're going to utilize the AI for. As long as it remains within ethical boundaries, then it's a great, most of the times we look at it as a tool, but we'll have to stop looking at AI as tools, but AI becomes a partner. So when you start looking at AI as partner, then you start, involving it more and more into your righteous way of life, business, ethics, and then that becomes really the way to go.
But do you think this is, like you would like everyone to use AI ethically and everything to be developed in an ethical fashion, but what happens when it isn't, right? Or what happens when it's misused, or the algorithms learn everything, like not just the good and the right and the ethical, but the way or the prompts that you can input to kind of extract the output that you need.
I think
in that kind of circumstance.
Yeah, that's where the failure lies on the power of imagination of the creator of the AI tool. So imagination of figuring out where things could go wrong. Look at Apple as a use case, right? It's watertight as a product, as iOS as a platform, because they've thought through all the possible areas where there could be leakages of information, data breaches, etc. The same thing has to happen every time you're creating a language that is trying to gather more and more information from people, or is trying to help solve use cases. So it's very, very important that people who are creating AI tools have to have that imagination of understanding the good, the bad, the ugly.
I'd like to open that question up actually to the audience. Who do you think is responsible when AI goes wrong?
Steve.
Does anyone have a different opinion here? Because I feel like this is a very, it's something we don't talk about a lot. We don't talk about the ethics. So, Steve apparently.
And as a disclaimer, anything that goes wrong in my company, Steve is responsible.
And mine too.
That's why you're so chill, today.
What do I say? I think today, AI, ML, decision intelligence has always been around, right? Possibly large data set that people have used it constructively to create value. Now, all of them were within corporates, and I think the biggest struggle for most people is saying, are we going to go out there and actually look at public data, or do we want to use AI for internal consumption? I think that's where the tools or any technology that's coming out there is going to consume. That would mean to say that it's your data. Your financial numbers are today protected, however you protect it. Your retail numbers are protected, your competitive analysis are protected. I believe it becomes the corporate structure for that to stay within and decide how it's going to be consumed within the organization. Unless you're going to take that data out there. I believe very soon it will happen. I always say this, my son's possibly going to put his P&L up on social media and saying I had a screwed up month, tell me how to improve that, right? But today where we sit, our generation don't do that. We protect the data too close, keep it too close to our heart, right? So it eventually would become part of every corporate structure or every enterprise to make sure that it's consumed. And I think as business owners, I think they have to keep this as closest to them, because data is what would tell them what their past was, their future is, and what their present is going to be. And those decision intelligence is what they want, because the CEO wants to open up a voice chat. I have seen this work. There's a decision intelligence tool that we worked with, and we did a POC here, where you could call out and say, tell me what problem should I look at. It pops up the 20 stores and the categories that is not performing and saying, this is what you should look at today, right? So that's where it's going to be. Use your data. We collect data. We have a lot of information around us, but are we able to do this using BI, the technology to slice and dice and actually tell us what to look for, what not to look for? Like Lena mentioned, it could be pricing, it could be warehouse optimization, it could be supply chain optimization. And all of that is driven either by internal data or internal SOPs. So I think that information we'll have to use that data and protect that data internally, right? Unless we want to put this out publicly and then it becomes a government or a registration that has to protect. I think that's what it is. I think everyone's struggle here is to find that tool or find that solution or find that model to internally consume and actually help your business grow. And I don't think anybody here wants to help you grow your business. You want to grow mine. So that's how I look at it. So I think it becomes an enterprise's problem. So somebody within the business will have, possibly there is a role that's going to show up, like we have an AI minister, there's possibly there is an AI auditor tomorrow in every company, and that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I feel like.
Can I take one question
Yeah.
here? So I like the point that you said find 3 times. So let's ask the find team, because that's a platform. So we all get the business side of things, but it'll be good to understand from Ronak, maybe from the platform side of things, how are you seeing AI develop? And I'm seeing you do a lot of things, but it would be good to understand what you are trying to. How does the platform look at AI becoming a self-sustaining model for growth for brands?
I think the way we look at AI is more of an enabler for people in the organizations, right? Within Find, we actually have a squad, as we call it, which is responsible for teaching people how to be more productive using AI, right? And then this squad is made up of people from different domains. So there's a designer in the squad, there's an engineer in the squad, there's a product manager in the squad. And it acts as a council where people go with their problems. And we have this quote within the company: if you haven't asked ChatGPT yet, don't come to us, right? And if you can't find an answer with ChatGPT, I mean, it practically has all the solutions that you could think of. But the idea is, how can we first become really more productive with AI as opposed to anything else? And then once we become more productive, I think at the end of the day, we will solve for the problems that the business is facing anyway, right? And then we'll find creative ways to solve for the problems using AI rather than deploying a lot of people or products or solutions to a particular problem.
Great way to look at it. Sorry, I cut you.
No, that's okay. I mean, interesting though. Like, is your organisation actively encouraging people not to think for themselves? And
So,
just
yeah. So we are
ChatGPT.
a 1,200 people organization. Everybody has access to ChatGPT Plus, right? So everybody has paid access to ChatGPT Plus, and the reason that is the case is because most of our problems are trivial problems, right? And it's a problem that somebody has solved out there before. And so far, in most of the cases, we don't come across a solution that we haven't been able to find through ChatGPT, right? It is only if it is rocket science that maybe ChatGPT is not going to be able to answer it. But most of the times you are pretty much, if not all the way there, you are at least 50% there. It helps you think through, right? So it's almost like your sounding board. You can talk to it, you can tell it the problems. I would like to give you one example, right? So we have this product called Pixel Bin. It's somewhat like Canva. It's a SaaS product, so people can come find it online, subscribe to it, and then start using it. We had this problem of how do we optimize for pricing, right? And the product manager actually gave all the traffic data, all the subscription data, all the usage data of the platform to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT actually came up with a pricing model, right? And we implemented that pricing model, and then our revenue shot up by about 100%. Right? Nobody did anything, right? It just took all that data. So a chat GPT actually today is my data scientist, right? If I want to analyze a report, I don't go to a BI developer, I don't go to an analyst. I just give it a bunch of files and ask it to give us some output, some analysis of the data.
And do you trust it?
You have to verify it.
That's the human part.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just going back to what Steve said, I think, yes, it is corporate responsibility, but I think it does have to come from a higher level. I think there has to be an element of, governments or ministers or policies at some point. Maybe it's still too early, but it's going to come.
It's still too early, but I think it's going to become, every government will be responsible for the amount of data information that is created. Citizenship itself is going to be currency of the future, right? So that's how powerful it is going to be. So every human being will have access to various things in life based on their profile, which gets created using data analytics, modeling all around it. So that's how it's going to evolve.
Somi and I had allocated this section for questions, so I don't know if anyone had any questions they wanted to put to our AI expert over here.
I'm not the expert. I think Ronak is a better expert than me on AI already.
I have one question. Anybody can answer that. So, as I said, I explained we are trying some things, experiments to use AI to improve our business and product. But we always keep on getting questions from management as to do something big. You're doing something very, very small, minor improvements. What can we? How can you use AI to drive something which has a bigger impact on business? So she gave an example, which is a decent impact, but I don't know what effort it took. Anybody else's example of what areas you think can give a bigger impact in probably in a retail context or e-commerce context using AI? I would like to know that.
So yeah, I think those are tangible ones that are already happening. But I really like this idea of bridging the gap using your device between customer data and user data. Because today, like you rightly said, right, 30% of your customers you don't even get access to. Now imagine if you are able to gather that data, hash it, and be able to profile the consumer based on either their payment method or their device ID. And then, so I know how many times Amit shops in my retail store, how many times he shops online, what is his preferred time of shopping.
My name is Kunal. I'm working with Etisalat right now. But I'll just share you an experience from what Erica was saying earlier. We've developed something called as AI for business in our current organization. I've seen both parts in the last 15 years of my career, where this part of the world was already coping up with machine learning tools. AI has come over and above of it, wherein marketing, CXOs, CTOs want tangible results immediately. What we have done in the retail stores, or for that say to my SME base also, we understand the customer behavior basis the AI tool. It's not that the data is already available with us and somebody makes a decision on our behalf. As Ronak was mentioning that yes, you have, today I can also incorporate a BI dashboard or Power BI dashboard and put it in ChatGPT. It will fetch me results. But that verification link or verification decision remains with the business owner. So today we understand the complex problems that a business faces. We give it to the particular person who's in charge of the technologies, be it a IT department or a CTO, and we divide what can be resolved between a machine learning tool, so we do not invest another layer on AI, versus what AI can give us an innovative solution. I think that is we are trying to bridge that gap between, because I'm trying to bridge something between retail as well as my B2B customers. If you have an organization today, you can be my retail customer as well. So I try to govern that system data in such a way that yes, I have that data to make a sensible call in terms of running an ad campaign or giving them an offer. I clearly distinguish it between which tool will give me the right answer. I don't want to invest another tool which is just sitting over an AI tool. ChatGPT, yes, free versions, beta versions, paid versions, ChatGPT 2.0, everything is available. But do we require that in current sense is something that business evaluates and gives. Because at the end of the day, the business needs to earn that ROI and justify it. So I think the gap that yes, what is required effectively and efficiently for our businesses. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing, Kunal. I think very insightful. Thanks.